Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And as you can tell from the banner at the bottom of the picture, we're having as our guest tonight Esther Ngotho, who is a candidate for City Councilor-At-Large. Welcome to the show, Esther.
Thank you.
Welcome, Esther.
So, we start all these things off with the famous question of, why are you running?
Before I answer that, I will tell you that I have asked myself that question many times. And I have asked myself why I have exposed myself in this process, because it makes me feel so vulnerable. But my obligation to my community propels me beyond my vulnerabilities. Many times in this city, the community had discussions about what they want, what their priorities were, and they decided to form the Beverly Human Rights Committee back in 2015 because they wanted diversity and inclusion. And after that, there were the community was clamoring for racial and social justice, and they hung two banners on Cabot Street to declare that indeed immigrants were welcome here and that Black Lives Matter. It was those declarations that encouraged me and challenged me to come out of the shadows and ensure that these people were represented with equity. Mm-hmm. So that is why I'm running.
Well, the school committee voted that the district is a, quote, sanctuary district, and they put forth their manifesto of what it all happens, which is about the same words that came out of, you were at that presentation in the senior center?
Yes.
Yeah. So essentially what the chief of police and the city solicitor and the assistant superintendent of schools said we're doing right now is essentially what the manifesto of the school committee says. The mayor put forth his idea of what the city values are. Are you comfortable with them?
Yes, I am comfortable with him because I think, and this is what I hope, is that she's giving people a little bit more time to come to terms with sanctuary city. Now, I do believe that a sanctuary resolution should come before the city council. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that we should become a sanctuary city, because if we don't, then what we've been saying are just mere statements of solidarity. We need to create policies that are paired with accountability measures. So I think it's okay for the mayor to give people a little bit more time to get comfortable with the term sanctuary city, because we cannot become afraid of using the term sanctuary city. It has a very deep meaning to the immigrants. That is the term they understand. And they understand it to mean that a sanctuary city is a place where their needs of security, of belonging, and of agency are taken care of. So that sanctuary city, sanctuary status, sanctuary city cannot be changed for anything else. It will mean something different.
Let me just say to you that, first of all, this country has always welcomed legal immigrants. And I think other countries, like us, have laws that permit legal immigrants to come here. But illegal immigrants, when they cross the border, they're breaking our laws. So when I went down Cabot Street and I saw the sign on the church, all immigrants are welcome, I was very disturbed, because I don't think that we should welcome illegal immigrants. When we do that, we're saying that our laws don't matter. and our laws do matter, and it's part of our Constitution. So I think the sanctuary city status, we can see what's happening in Salem. And it is very heated in Salem because there are two groups, one for and one against. It is on the ballot. And I believe that if you're going to talk about becoming a sanctuary city, and we have interviewed the other candidates, and I believe all of them have said, well, with the exception of one, he wasn't sure. The others said, no, they don't think it's necessary. But I think if you're going to have that, I think it would be incumbent upon the city council to put it to a vote of the people.
Gail, you have opened a door that we must walk through.
Sure.
First of all, the difference between illegal immigrants and all of us here is that the illegal immigrants don't have official papers. That's the only difference. Secondly, I would like to ask you, is Harriet Tubman a criminal?
Harriet Tubman, in her day, she might have been considered one. I don't know.
Okay, what
I'm
about
not
today?
that familiar with.
Okay, Harriet Tubman escaped slavery from the South and went to the North.
Right.
And there's another man by the name Frederick Douglass who was assisting fugitive slaves that were escaping from the South to the North. During their days, they broke the law. But today, Frederick is a hero, and Harriet Tubman is a shero. The thing that is common between what they did and what illegal immigrants do, illegal immigrants are running away from insecurity and poverty.
Not all of them are, though, Esther. And that's the problem, because our borders are very porous. And let me ask you this. Do you think that they should be vetted before they come into this country? Or should we just open the doors, excuse me, and say, okay, everybody come here? Because we know that some of them are bad people, and they want to do us harm. And the problem is we need to vet them so that we can discern the good from the bad as well as we can. And that's not happening. It's starting to happen now, but it hadn't been happening for the last 8 years.
And we must note that illegal immigrants don't always come through the border. There are people who come here
Oh, yeah.
That's
legally.
true.
They
Yes.
overstay their visa.
They
Yeah.
overstay their fees.
And they're
Yeah.
here illegally.
Yeah.
And we must also say that there are criminals among Americans. In our city, they are criminals.
Of course.
And in the same way, there are criminals among the immigrants. So we cannot hold all the immigrant community responsible just because a criminal among them has done something.
That's what vetting will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To give you an example, I just tried for the heck of it to get a permanent visa to move to Canada.
Okay.
I can't get one. I fill out all the paperwork online and fill in all the blanks, and I'm not acceptable to Canada. They've got rules and regulations of who can be in the country and who can't. One of the comments that one of the previous prime ministers of Canada made was they're very happy with immigrants because most of them have a better education than the average Canadian. So they are being very selective and for good and valid reasons. So the concept that we can accept everybody, the numbers don't work.
Let me tell you what is wrong with that, George. Like this criminal, the one who killed a lady in California.
Yeah.
He came here 5 times.
Yeah.
5 times. He wasn't vetted. So the
And he
guy,
came to a sanctuary state,
Yeah.
a sanctuary city.
And that's the kind of problem
That's
we're trying to
the problem.
avoid.
Okay.
How can he keep coming across the border 5 times?
okay, here's what I would say. He came here 5 times, and he is an immigrant who can't even speak English. So how does an immigrant who can't even speak English come over our border 5 times when we have a powerful government that should be able to put immigration system in place, but they're not doing that?
Yeah, that's
That's
exactly
the
the problem.
problem.
And I
So-
think this is where you and I differ, honestly. You and I have had the discussion that I'm first generation, you're immigrant, your daughter's first generation. Oh, by the way, I also have a commission, or I had a commission with the Corps of Engineers too, way
Okay.
back when.
All right.
But the difference I think we're trying to get to is that the government has been extremely lax at the federal level in controlling the borders and controlling the immigration, as you mentioned earlier, with people overstaying their visas. And this has got to change. And it's got to change at the federal level. The problem I have with the concept of saying this is a sanctuary is that even when the sanctuary was in full force in the 1500s, it was a law of the church that if you were in a sanctuary, you could not be removed except for treason or sacrilege. So there are exceptions to it. And I think this is the misconception that I think a lot of us are concerned about, that somebody will come here and think that, oh, it's a sanctuary city, it's like having a get-out-of-jail-free card. And I think, as the chief of police pointed out very explicitly, if somebody is doing something that's a little funny, they are going to be checked out. And if it finds out that their identity doesn't check or there's an outstanding warrant on them, they're going to hold them until it gets sorted out. And I think that's what we all expect. And what he also said is, they're not going to bother to ask what's your immigration status. The assistant superintendent of schools, Sue Chirocek, also said, we don't ask about immigration status. We are not allowed to. We have to treat all kids who are within our border. So I think there is no real problem until somebody wants to put a label on it, and then we end up like Salem with 2 factions banging heads against each other. And we've got other issues in the city that need to be addressed.
Yeah, but the problem there is that sanctuary city is a misnomer. People are mistaking what it means. It does not mean that if you're a criminal, you're protected by being in a sanctuary city. The federal government...
Well, that's what I have a problem with. The word
They
sanctuary
are
and the
protected.
concept of a sanctuary from the 1500s on has got a certain connotation to it. And nobody is standing up saying that, oh, we're going to call it a sanctuary city, but it really doesn't mean you get out of jail free if you happen to be an illegal immigrant. You're treated just like everybody else. You break the law, you do the time.
Can I tell you what the problem I see in this? When you're not intimate with the problem, then you don't understand that problem. Just like, and I will use...
Well, okay, that gets down to, what kind of a problem are we having in Beverly with immigrants, legal and illegal? I don't see anything in the papers about either one of them.
Well, the problem I see is that I've seen it in Salem, in the news.
No, but it's just strictly speaking about Beverly. What are the problems that are happening right here, right now, that we need to fix?
Well, like I said to you yesterday, there was an incident in Beverly, and
Oh, the drug dealers.
the drug dealers. One of them was white. The other one, we're not sure. He had a Spanish-sounding name. And unfortunately, what is not allowed anymore is for the papers used to point out they were illegal immigrants here. And we've had them driving cars without a license, getting into accidents, hurting people. Now we don't know, and nobody's talking. This was a very serious drug bust that was broken up by the police. And we don't know any more than that. Is this person, is he an immigrant, illegal immigrant? Is he a citizen? We don't know. I mean, that should be part of the story, I think.
Yeah, I think the problem here is that we are mixing a lot of things. Immigration is a multifactorial, multidimensional problem. And we are mixing immigration with the drugs, with the guns. And if we mix them like that, we won't be able to solve the problem, because if you bring drugs and attach them to immigration, then it's even going to become very complicated, because look at it this way. If you go to drugs, you will see that people, men of color, are impacted badly by drugs and crack, which is criminalized.
Everybody is.
And so if you go there and attach that to immigration, you will think that immigration is bad, but that is not the problem.
No.
So these things must be separated if we have to resolve them.
I think that the common feature is the lack of control at the borders. There's an old joke about how would a terrorist sneak an atomic bomb into this country? Oh, they put it in a bale of marijuana. Because the borders are porous. There was an incident in Salem maybe 6 months ago now where the police arrested somebody, and the individual, as they approached the car, was swallowing balloons of black tar heroin. The black tar heroin comes out of the west coast of Mexico. And there's a group called the Silaski Boys. It's a gang that have been dealing drugs coming across the border through mostly Appalachia. Now they're into the north. So this is a problem with border control. Immigration happens to be an incident. There's a very good book that describes this whole situation. But it's a problem that it's at the federal level. And I don't see much that we can do at a city level to solve that problem, or to solve the problem with people overstaying their visas or coming into the country. So I'm not sure why the emphasis on this. What I would rather be interested in is, we've got an issue in town where Rantoul Street is being heavily developed.
Okay.
And a lot of people are concerned, hey, is that too much or too little? We had a discussion with a couple of the candidates for city council, and with Andrew DeFrenza and Jason Silva, the gentleman you're trying to replace,
Yes.
about affordable housing.
Okay.
And these are the issues that I think we can do something about, and we have to understand. And part of the concern I have is, you look at Salem as an example of what can go wrong when you start to get into these kind of socially correct issues. You get two groups banging heads, and I had a discussion with one of the gentlemen at the Y the other day, and he's concerned about converting a certain old junkyard into housing. And he's saying, no, we need to have more industry, more businesses in the area. And we need to have businesses that are not just fast food kind of things that don't pay enough. You look at the situation in town, and I think that's a real problem. If somebody works in town, in the city, can they afford to live here? And I think that's something that the city council
city
can
council should work on
and
that,
I think ought to be focused on.
The way I see it, when I look at it from a business lens, is that development is not all bad. Because when we build many rental units, that will ease the pressure on demands for units, and it will also relax rental prices. So that is one way of dealing with housing problem. The other way that I see, the other thing that I see we can do is to use the law of inclusionary zoning, where a developer includes like 10% of affordable units.
Yeah, 40B.
Yes. And if they don't, then they pay money to the housing trust.
Yeah.
I read in the papers about the Elliott Ladding, and that bothered me a little bit, because they were supposed to either include 10% affordable units,
Yep.
or they decided to pay instead.
Oh, right, yeah.
But when you look at what they paid an equivalent of only one unit. I think I was not okay with that. It should be an equivalent of 10 units. So they should have paid what they paid times 7.3.
But
Yeah.
why should they be allowed to pay it in the first place?
That's what the law stipulates.
Yeah,
Massachusetts law.
that's a state law.
Yeah.
Right, I know
Yeah.
it, but it seems like if you have a law, you shouldn't be able to buy your way out of it.
Yeah, and it's not a good thing because what that does for that area and for any other area, it gentrifies. It
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
clears and forwards the middle class and the vulnerable people. So it's not a good thing. I don't
No.
think.
No, I don't
It's-
think so either.
And the other issue comes down to is, okay, so you got 10 units worth of contributions to the Affordable Housing Fund. Where are you going to build them?
And
In any close proximity to it? Or as you're pointing out, you're creating an enclave
yes,
of high rent district.
yes,
And the problem that I see in this country is the people in the low rent district are getting an awful lot of police attention and not a lot of educational help.
yeah.
And that's where I think the big disparity comes in.
It creates social and economic disparity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that gets to the other point I think that we've brought up with some of the other candidates that the Essex Aggie or North Shore Regional Tech, whatever you know, you haven't been in town long enough to know about Essex Aggie. It goes way back.
I do though.
Yeah.
My daughter wanted to go there
Yeah.
instead of Beverly High School, and I was like, no.
And there are a number of students who can't get in there. We've heard a number like 300. They're full. They're on a waiting list. They're never
Okay.
going to get in there. And yet, cities like Peabody are taking the initiative to say, okay, if we can't get them into North Shore Regional Tech, we will start teaching courses at the high school which are more vocationally oriented, like IT,
Okay.
computer programming. And one of the things that we would like to see, I think, and I personally would, is more emphasis on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we got into this discussion that city council, technically, all you can do is say yay or nay on the city budget in terms of what the school committee asked for.
Okay.
But I think what I would like to see is some sort of initiative from the city council to go to the school committee and say, hey, guys, we need more vocational stuff. You can't get the kids into Essex Aggie. They don't have the room. What can you do locally? And I think that kind of initiative would have a big effect on having jobs in town that people can earn decent money
Yes.
and be able to live here.
I don't know a lot about how the school system operates here, but what it sounds to me like is that in order to do that, they need to sit down and make the curriculum again and create some laws that allow them to do that. So it's like it would be an undertaking to turn Beverly High School into a vocational, or even to include part of the vocational. So I don't think it's something that can be done like immediately. I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
Well,
Yeah.
Beverly High School used to have its own vocational
Yeah,
wing.
Okay.
patent trade schools. That
The
was
trade,
in
and it was a very, well-known and very, very good trade school.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when they built the high school, that disappeared, and there was no room for these kids. And let's face it, not every child is geared toward college, whether it be financially they can't afford it, or maybe they just don't want to go. Maybe
Yes.
they're more talented in other areas. So I think if the number is accurate and 300 is the number, what do you do with these children? That's not something that the city council has to deal with.
Not
It's
directly.
not directly, that's the
Yes.
word I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's certainly something that they should be talking to the school committee about and say, what are we going to do with these kids? We have to either do something.
Yes, I
Like
hear you.
George said with the Peabody schools, they're trying to, not to step on the toes of the vocational school, but certainly to not just leave these kids hanging.
Yeah, I hear you. Do you know why it was discontinued? From the Beverly High School?
Well, when they built the new one, they just,
Well, it
They-
disappeared
it
before that.
was-
When they,
not even part of the plan.
yeah, they built the high school in 1965, the original high school. Well, not the original. One of the previous high schools was built in 1965, and it had a wing on it that was the patent trade school. And the trade school was geared to the shoe when the United Shoe Machinery Company was active. And the path to success was you go to patent trade school, you learn to be either a patent maker or a machinist, and when you graduate, you walk across the street and you got a
Get
job.
a job.
And it was a nice synergy right there. And as the shoe started to disintegrate, the opportunities weren't there. And my take on it is they didn't switch the program around to reflect what was needed. And one of the things that always bothers me is you drive down Cabot Street just past the Nissan dealer, there's a little company in there that's always got a sign up. They're looking for CNC operators. And they're really looking for somebody who can program a CNC machine. There is an opportunity for somebody, and that's something that could be taught in the high school.
George, we're getting a little short on time.
I know that, yes.
So that,
And I'm getting wound up, I'm sorry.
gotta rewind you, George. Let Esther get a few things in. What are your priorities? I know you've already stated a few, but what about the structure of the city, the streets, and all those things? You're going to get those phone calls as a city councilor. How are you going to deal with those?
Can you reframe that
Okay.
question just to
For
make sure
instance,
I understand?
there's a problem on Boyle Street,
Okay.
where I used to live. And the traffic goes from 128, they cut through Boyle Street to get to Hale Street. Trucks, buses, huge, you know,
They're going to Endicott.
and they're going to Endicott College. And they come flying down Boyle Street. Boyle Street is a very curvy road with no sidewalks. Those kinds of things,
Yes.
people are going to be calling you about and saying,
Yeah, I know.
Esther, we have this problem. What are you going to do to help us?
I think I've had my own problems with some of the roads in the city, like the junction, although that appears to be towards Denver's, the junction on 62 when you get onto 128.
Yes,
That-
terrible.
It is on the left.
Yeah, we're very lucky the state came in and redesigned that for us again.
Yeah, but it's still
It's horrible.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I have a problem on the junction between Bridge Street and I think River Street. There's another area there that is very dangerous. And I have tried, actually, I wasn't even in the council, but I have spoken to the council officials about it. And
Good.
I said to them, do you know that this is here? Do you know this is happening there? And they're aware. but what the council officials said to me is that they're waiting for grants to look into all those. So I don't know what I would say to.
I hear you.
Yes.
We have only about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
So if you want to give a brief summary of, and I mean brief,
Okay.
why you're running in.
All right. In closing, I'll say that inclusion and participation of marginalized people means working with them as beneficiaries, as partners, and as leaders. And we know that in this country, the system serves those who have power. And so if you do not have power, if you're not on the table, then you are in the menu. And I'm therefore trying to get to the table so I can represent these people with equity. I would ask that people vote for me, because voting for me is a way of ensuring that all of Beverly is served with justice. And just with one vote, people will be able to vote for a woman, an immigrant, and a person of color all at once. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show.
Okay, thank you.
And good
so
luck.
much. Thank you.
And we thank the viewers for watching. We will continue with one or two more candidate interviews before the election. So we hope that you will watch the show. You can view it on the local station and compare all the candidates, read your newspapers, and become a well-informed voter before you go to the polls. Thank you.